versus vibe. Just wanted to make and share my build because I've been playing with Necros. I've been looking on YouTube, and not a lot of people are playing minion Necros. I would say 90% of Necros are Bone Spear, and that really kills the fantasy for me, in my opinion. Now, if you do go Bone Spear, I totally recommend going Bone Spear because it's a very strong build that requires it's a very streamlined build where you just kind of go all in on something. You're really good, you're really strong, you can shred through content, and there's very little thinking. But for me, I play PoE, I play a lot of action RPGs, play D3, D2, and I really wanted to challenge myself to be selfish in my choices, in that I wanted to make my own build and use ideas that people have out there, and kind of add it to my own style. And I think I created something pretty unique that revolves around Blood Mist and resetting cooldowns. And it's a really fun play style. And I think that a lot of people, will enjoy this type of play style, especially if you wanted to play a Necro that had minions. And the minions bring utility, they bring damage, and the minions don't die, right? Like it takes a lot of investments to get to that point. But then a lot of people like to play dot classes. I usually don't play dot classes, but that was the kind of way the cards played out. And I wanted to give, more a brief history of why I picked Necro. So the game released, I played Necro D2, D3, and I tend to play, summoner builds and ARPGs a lot. So I knew that I wanted to play something with minions. Now, why I decided to pick Necro over Rogue was because everyone was playing Rogue, but the real reason was that during open beta, I got to play with the pre-nerfed OPAF Explosive Mist, where if you guys read here, Blood Mist triggers corpse explosion on surrounding corpses. When Blood Mist detonates a corpse, its cooldown is reduced to 0.4. Now, this effect used to proc like 20 corpses in one cast. It was freaking nuts. And then I was super excited. I remember having a great playthrough with Necro. I was like, man, this is so broken. This is so fun, and I'm immune during this cast. Like this is so cool. And then come the actual early release, and this was actually one of my first imprints I got. I played it, I equipped it, I was super excited, and boom, it was like 1/20th of what it used to be. Now, I'm a pretty stubborn person. I have never unequipped this imprint ever in my playthrough, and I've always tried to figure out a way of weaving it into my rotation, my play style, the choices. So this was my anchor point, and I think it was a very great anchor point because it allowed me to be really creative in my build. But in essence, this build is just a summoner that has shadow damage, and happens to have Blood Mist that resets its cooldown a lot. So on big packs, I'm detonating all these corpses, and they're all doing shadow damage. And then my mages do shadow damage, and then it layers more shadow damage as it goes and goes and goes, where it's a ramping damage thing. And most of the time I'll be immune, and I'll be just going in and out and just being immune and dropping shadow damage everywhere. And I just love the fact how this played out, and I think that what I have created is pretty unique, and I haven't seen anything out there, and which is why I'm making this video and I'm making a one take of this. Um, so again, yeah, that's why I picked Necro for this codex. Period. Like I fell in love with it open beta. Come the game's release, it sucked, but I still was stubborn enough to stick with it and finally figured out a build. I know, and it took me 76 levels to figure it out 1 week. And I've gone through a lot of variations of it too. I won't go too into it. I want to stay focused on what I have, in front of us right here today. But definitely leave any questions you guys have, and I'll try to see what I can do to help you guys out. But one thing I noticed was that with this build, it's a master of none. I'm doing a lot of hybrid damage. Maybe 50% comes from minions, 50% comes from darkness. And then if I notice any weakness in my build, I'll shift more darkness, and then my minions will catch up. Or my minions will be the main lead, and then my darkness will catch up. But when I got to tier 4, my minions were just dead all the time, so I had to focus on shadow, and that actually led to me building this build more towards shadow, where it's going to be like 60-40, and it's been a really good mix for sure. And some people want to go all minion damage. You can do that if you want, but have that shadow layer, for the help, because sometimes your minions AI is super bad, or they're always dead. So you want to always have some way of consistently doing damage, in my opinion. Um, but again, who is this build for? Who is Necro for? In general, my thoughts of Necro is that we have a great amount of defensive, natural defensives. In my opinion, I think having fortify, having all these options to your kid, and especially having a curse, one of the only curses in the game that benefits your whole party, and slows, aka a CC, so you can multiply slow damage, multiply crowd control damage on a curse, and having it cost so little essence, as well as doing a damage, um, uh, curse to them as well, a damage debuff to enemies. It really helps with power leveling. It helps with harder content. It helps with everything. It helps with your minions not dying as fast. And the best part of this, and why I'll never remove Decrepify, is because it resets all my cooldowns. Like, Blood Mist in this codex already has cooldown reset, and then Decrepify also has cooldown reset as well. So yes. So let's get into it. I'm gonna show you my skill tree. So, so yeah. So basically, what you're trying to do in the first part of this is use whatever. And this is not an early game build; it's a late game build. So what you want to do early on is spend 2 points wherever you want, um, and just use 2 points to get to the next phase of this. And then you're gonna sink in points to Hued Flesh. Yo, what's up? You, yeah, I'm recording a video right now. Yeah, yes, you're good. So like, you're gonna put 3 points into Hued Flesh, and then this is gonna be one of your most consistent ways to generate corpses, because this whole build, if you haven't noticed in my skill bar, I don't have a primary attack, and I don't have a basic. Sorry, I'll use game terms. I don't have a basic skill. I also don't have a core skill, right? It's very unorthodox. The only way I'm consistently generating damage is from corpse explosion, and having a way of proccing corpses from any type of damage, it is really helpful for sure. So again, you're just spending 3 points on here, and then you must spend one more to get to the next section. And this is when things get spicy. So, Blood Mist, I recommend that if you don't have any added levels to your Blood Mist from your gear, you want to get to at least level 5 Blood Mist. But if you can tell, my items contribute to 6 free levels of Blood Mist, and I have to invest in 1. And if I'm pushing harder content, I'm going to sink 4 more points into this, and I'm gonna get 11 out of 5, and then my CDs get really crazy. Here, like right now, my CD of Blood Mist is. I get excited about talking about Blood Mist because sometimes I'm in Blood Mist forever, and then shooting out corpses. I'm detonating dead, and then I'm immune, and it's so good because the Blood Mist will remove every dot in the game. It'll remove bleed. It'll remove poison. It'll remove darkness dot, and then it will also break CC, any hard CC in the game. Freeze. It'll break you out of stuns, fears. Won't break you out of silences, but if you're inside of the immunity for those 3 seconds, you can walk into anything you want, and it's really cool because, and I'll spend a section talking about legendary aspect interactions with Blood Mist. But one important thing to notice is this ring. It does shadow damage, so it fits the theme of this Necromancer with minions and darkness. And then on top of that, no movement speed penalty. You wait till you guys see me play this. It's freaking awesome. So yeah, Blood Mist, great ability. You just go simply the overpowers. This doesn't matter. But the one thing that you must go, and you must go, is leaves behind a corpse every 1 second. If you notice so far, the only way we generate corpse is random hits, lucky hits. And we want to find gear with lucky hit, by the way, if we can. But the minions and your dot damage and all the ticks that you do, it's a lot of chances for you to generate these corpses. But still, having a guaranteed way of generating a corpse from Blood Mist is super sick, super sick. and it's guaranteed. It's always there. It's always going to happen. And with the codex that I always leave on, explosive mist, it's going to detonate twice for free, and multiple more times when there's actual corpses around me. I think it's up to 3 times. If there's like 5 corpses around me, it'll detonate 3 times, which is pretty sick because that's 1.5 seconds already off of your CD. If you guys want to see what my CD looks like if I invest full points into it, I'll just do that real quick. So 11 is 14 seconds. Cool. Now let's talk about the bread and butter of this build. Corpse Explosion. One of the main reasons why I've ever played any Necro is because I love Corpse Explosion. I love the concept. I love the sound, and I love how it's a very unique and only Necro thing, right? Bone Spear, you're basically playing a Sork and a Rogue mix of penetrating shot and a caster, right? And having a class that generates corpses and explodes them, only one class in the game does that, and that's Necro. And that's why I wanted to keep it thematic with the fantasy of the class, and I'm happy that it works out. So radius is good, 15%. Cool. And then darkness skill, and mine does 9.8k, which is pretty sick because it used to be like nothing. But yeah, mine does 9.8k at the moment, and that's without calculating the damage additives that would happen from my codexes that boost darkness damage. Now, again, with the topic of more, just walking through my passive tree, we have increased damage and life of your skeleton warriors, because your skeleton warriors are going to be one of your most consistent ways of generating corpses, and they will generate more corpses than you ever need, so there's no need to add more skeletons. Just having the base reapers with 15% chance to carve flesh from forming a corpse is freaking awesome. And then on top of that, minion damage again can proc lucky hit, and it'll actually give you a chance to create even more corpses from the reapers. So reapers are mandatory for this build. They're amazing. They're my boys. And this is really all I found that they need to like kind of stay relevant. And then we'll talk about how to get them back up and how to get them tankier. But this is a must in my opinion. If they're dead, your corpse generation is like 60%, not as effective. So let's move on. You guys could go field by death, but I'm gonna not talk about could goes a lot in this process. So I'm just going to stick to what I have so you guys can try to mirror it and keep the parts that you want. I'm not telling you that this is the best and this is what you should do. I'm just telling you why I made these decisions, and hopefully you like some of the methodologies that I'm thinking about. So Decrepify, I get 3 free levels of it. Ideally, I want to max this out so that the effect is even more DR debuff for the enemies, damage reduction, and even more slow. But again, I don't need to take Blight to take advantage of slow, right? A lot of people take Blight because it has the slow in there, but I take Decrepify for the slow, and then I'm going to build on top of slow damage and CC damage. But my favorite part of Decrepify is that no other class really has a debuff like Necro does. Like a slow and a damage reduction, that's going to help out with every aspect of this game. And then it is a selfish curse as well. So if you're playing with friends, Necro is going to add this layer of utility, similar to a barb. And nothing, you're going to be like, yo, I need a Necro for Decrepify, because it's less damage for everyone. And then also it slows, so then people can take advantage of slow damage. And it is a really good party util, but it's very, 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 very selfish as well. That's why I'll never remove it from my skill bars. So Lucky Hit basically dictates that enemies hit while afflicted with Decrepify have a 10% chance to be stunned for 2 seconds. So that's a hard CC. You can add on top of CC damage if you want, like stun enemy damage, but there's no need. It's just nice to have and nice to know that your minions can proc a stun whenever they hit, and your dots can proc a stun. So that's cool. And then my favorite part of this whole thing, and it is just so cool, is this Lucky Hit. Enemies hit while afflicted with Decrepify have 15% to reduce your active cooldown by 1 second. And if you look at my build, you'll see that this procs all the time. Sometimes I use all my CDs and I'm cycling like an enhanced shaman, just popping all these things that flashing up on my screen. And even though my Army of the Dead's at 53 seconds, sometimes it pops right back up and I can cycle it for a longer pull. So this is a must in my opinion. Decrepify is amazing, and also, when I was using Blight, I didn't have a lot of essence to cast Decrepify, but now that's the only essence costing in my build. So it's super good, super super good. Now, Skeleton Mage Mastery. These Skeleton Mages are super, super crucial because they are darkness damage and the only minion in the game that has the Shadow Darkness damage archetype. And anything in the game that says your minions do more shadow damage is just going to be relevant to Skeleton Mages, I'm pretty sure. So just keep that in mind. And we always go the Fire Additional Shadow Bolt every 5th attack because, boom, more shadow damage, more procs, right? So this is a must. And this is a must, in my opinion. So we've basically only talked about must, and then I also like Death's Embrace. This is somewhat optional. If you're already tanky, if you're already doing a lot of damage, maybe you can spend it elsewhere. But for me, I like the free DR and the free damage buff. It's always free too. So as we get down here, we're gonna start talking about defensives and your own kit's utility, as well as committing to a darkness playstyle. So I used to not have anything here, and I used to have just Reaper's Pursuit, which is awesome. And I recommend you guys try to figure out a way of getting 3 out of 3 for Reaper's Pursuit if you don't have movement speed in your kit at all. But I just, for this purpose, I wanted more damage, and my movement speed was already okay. But I am super fast with 3 out of 3 Reaper's Pursuit. But again, Gloom is awesome because it is a 18% damage buff. And it is really great, and it is going to help out your mages. It's going to help out your own damage. And then this is a really, really good optional thing. If you didn't want to, if your damage is fine, you don't need to commit as hard for this. And this is the first place I'm going to remove if I ever need to edit my build for what content I'm doing. But this is a really good way of boosting damage to things that are already naturally in your kit. We know we have permanent slow from Decrepify. We know we have a chance to stun from not only the proc of Decrepify, but the reason why I go Iron Golem is because they have a stun that's on a very, very low CD, and then it also vulnerables. So I went through a lot of iterations with how to get vulnerable into the build, and the most consistent I found was Golem for sure. And it kind of plays with the Paragon choice I made as well. So it's great. I love my Iron Golem, and I recommend Iron Golem for every Necromancer because it's a great left click ability. Believe it or not, it's a great place to have a left click. And sometimes left click in Diablo is super trash, and I feel like Golem is a really good left click alternative. And when you find an enemy you want to stun, you just left click it and it stuns it, adds vulnerable, and it's a super useful, and it resets all the time the CD. So yeah, I love Iron Golem, and I've never really tried anything else. And I wish this was shadow damage, otherwise I would try it. So again, the stun additive is useful for the Golem stun and the Decrepify stun. And the Decrepify is always going to be on and always going to be slowing. So with that being said, you're going to always get that 9% from slow, and you're going to get an extra 9% from stun and immobilized, which also happens, pretty frequently too. So Necrotic Carapace is a free fortify, basically for free, because you're always generating corpses, and you're always going to have this almost like 100 fortify all the time, and then you're going to take advantage of things that are like more damage while fortified, DR while fortified, and it's just a free, like, a lot of people say that minions are utility, not damage, and this is the reason why, because I'm generating corpses from Reapers. They have lucky hit chance to create corpses, and from hewed flesh, and yeah, I'm always going to be fortified, which is sick. And then let's talk about, finally start the conversation about how to keep your minions alive. Now this is whatever, but this is the juice. This is absolutely the juice, and I love this because it's not on a CD like this ability. 5 seconds is a long time, right? And it's only going to be X amount of max life. And what the good thing about Blood Orbs is it happens during combat, so you can keep. You're always detonating corpses, and then there's a codex I'll show you that plays into this. But you're always gonna be detonating corpses, so you're gonna want to, you're gonna want to take transfusion for sure, because I think it's the most reliable way to keep your minions healthy and alive. And then sometimes there's like 10 blood orbs around, and you just walk through all of them if your minions are low, and they'll go from 0 to full. Let's move on. Golem mastery is super optional. I just personally like to be maxed out on my golem, because my golem is going to be very important for me to kite and very important for me to be vulnerable. So I'm gonna keep him alive. So I go 3 out of 3. Army of the Dead. I used to go Bone Storm, but I didn't know that dots can't crit. So I stopped using Bone Storm completely. And I used to convert it to Shadow and everything. And it used to be a really cool way to consume corpses as well to extend the duration. But I decided Army of the Dead, and because I didn't realize 2 things about Army of the Dead. One, it creates corpse, so it's your second most consistent way of creating corpses from a dedicated button. And on top of that, it also increases their move speed. I mean, their attack speed, and it also will automatically pick up your missing, army. So say I had like 3 skeleton warriors down, 2 mages down, it'll pick them up while I pop it, which is super nice because then I can focus on detonating dead instead of raise skeleton. So yeah, corpse generation, and then it also raises warriors and mages, so more shadow damage. We're gonna go these 3 as mandatory. Free attack speed, so more chances for your minions to actually create a corpse, your reapers. More darkness damage from your shadow mages, and it's just really good, and you're always gonna be kind of around your minions too. Now my Hellbound commander is 6 out of 3 because of my necklace, and it's a really, 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 really good way of getting your minions some damage. And then Depth's Defense is mandatory. This got nerfed, and I wish they didn't, because a lot of people are like, "Fuck, forget my my minion build because it doesn't. All my minions always die, and this is mandatory if you don't want your minions to die." Okay, now why I hate Kalen's edict and why they need to change it, in my opinion, is because if you have not taken damage in the last 3 seconds, your minions get 15% attack speed, and then this is double, so 30% attack speed. Why I hate it is because you're gonna always be taking damage in this game. It is just a reality, and then you making a mistake and then taking a big penalty is not a good feeling in any regard, especially if you're learning this game, which everyone is still learning. And maybe it's a good min max down the road, but I hate this ability. I actually did not like it. I would be like kind of like kiting, playing safe, and then I get hit by a random like puddle on the floor, then you lose it, and then your minions suck. It's not a good feeling at all. So I have always gone Shadow Blight, even without my Shadow, all in now these days. And because, like I said, I always was doing exploding corpses with my explosive miss, and that was the reason why I picked Necro. And I always had Shadow damage in my kit. So extra 10%, whatever, but yeah, this is the juice of our damage. I love this ability now that I understand it. I'm gonna quickly go through Paragons because I winged this, and you smarter people that are potentially watching this, you can do whatever the hell you want, but I'll just show you the decisions I made. So I went right here, I went up, and I put in skeleton mages, and I knew I wanted to buff my skeleton mages as much as possible, and now it's at nearly 68% at whatever level this glyph is. And I went around so I can get that increased resistance, but I might modify this down the road because my minions don't really die anymore. So went here, and then one thing to notice is I went Cult Leader, and I didn't even know I could rotate this whole thing, but I guess I got lucky, and I got Cult Leader right away, and that's why I always wanted to keep a Golem in my kit, because that's 15% more damage, and Golems have great utility. So then I hugged left here, and I went to Infuse Caster, and I still need to get more willpower. I need 4 more, and I haven't done any Statue of Lilith. And went Puppeteer, equipped the Glyph Socket here for more DR and minion damage, and got these rare nodes. And then here I got Wither, and I got this pretty quick. I was like, I need more damage, so I got Wither. And this position of Wither is very strategic because you can do a minimal investment and then get way more damage. But I just want to note something real quick. Like, my character is not min-maxed at all, really, in regards to the Renown. and I am probably missing out on like at least 100% more damage if I were just to commit, get all my Paragon points figured out. But I do want to talk about where I'll be going, I guess, in the future, and it's to eventually get to Malediction, so then I get like 80% shadow damage for free, and then maybe weave in um, the corpse flesh ear, as well as maybe going towards golems as well. But I'm not sure yet. I'm just kind of enjoying the process of walking through a skill tree for the first time, this Paragon tree, and the choices I made, I think I've been pretty strategic. Um, so that's cool. Okay, now let's get to the fun part. As I have created an image, and I think I now just realized I forgot the pants. So let me go ahead and add that real quick. So I'm just gonna do this from a paint project. Give me a second. Okay. I forgot to screenshot my pants, and I'm just gonna real quick do that. Oh, I did have it. I'm tripping. So this is why one takes are fun, right, guys? Okay, let's walk through my items, and I wanted to keep it very like, I guess, visual for you guys. So here is my visual guide to this whole chaotic mess. So let's start off with my helm and blood mist, and these two imprints are very 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 good together in my opinion. And then with the shadow damage mastery, it, as you can see, I drew an arrow. This leaves a shadow dot, and then this explodes your corpse explosion that leaves a shadow dot. So both of these play into the shadow blight, right? And then I have these unique gloves that allow me to corpse explode, and then it spawns a little guy that runs and explodes. So I'm able to now use my blood mist from a distance, and then these guys are running in and doing damage, and then I don't have to aim my corpse explosion in much. So it's a really good mandatory unique in my opinion. So this really made my build fun and allowed me to just turn my brain off because I don't have to aim in this build. All I have to do is explode corpses, and these guys automatically seek enemies, and it's like playing like Vampire Survivor, where things are just automatically hitting enemies, which is sick. And then again, corpse explosion procs darkness, and that will proc your shadow blight. And then these two, my sword, I don't have a max roll at all, but nonetheless, I have it on my two hands, so I can get the most out of this shadow blight damage effect. And then I have an 85% increased damage to my shadow blight e passive. So yeah, these two amplify your darkness damage and are pretty required in my opinion. Um, and if you don't have enough Paragon points, you're gonna maybe want to invest in things that keep your minions alive. But let's talk about these pants. And I recommend putting on pants. Is consuming a corpse has a 29% chance to spawn a blood orb, up to 30%. And I have two fortified gems in here because, like I said it earlier, we're always going to be fortified. We're always going to have this advantage. So getting more DR while fortified is pretty sick. And then this has 3 ranks of blood mist and 4 ranks of corpse explosion, and 30% DR while injured, which happens pretty often. And then some thorns, because I'm still trying to test if thorns procs corpses on lucky hit. But yeah, nonetheless, this generates blood orbs, and blood orbs heal your minions. So if you're like, why does this guy go transfusion and he can't generate blood orbs? It's because I will always have this imprint of generating a blood orb by consuming a corpse. And this will heal my minions, and this could potentially let you try out other builds where blood orbs reduce your ultimate cooldown. I was using this for a while, it was really good, but then I realized that my curse, Decrepify, was resetting cooldowns, so I didn't really need that in the kit. So this could be good for Maybe weaving in Bone Spirit if you have the chest. I do have the chest. I haven't tried it, but nonetheless, one of the cons of this build is you can't use Temerity, and it's really good with Temerity. Now, if I was very strong and I could sacrifice, um, the 4 levels of Corpse Explosion, maybe I'll go Temerity because it is sick. But you cannot use that because Corpse Explosion only rolls on pants, and that's our main source of damage. Let's talk about minions. Now, I used to have a lot more minion imprints, but you kind of get those imprints in your Paragon tree. And in my opinion, once you get in your tree, you don't need to have it as an investment as an aspect. Now, Skeleton Mages is a must because these guys are generating darkness damage for you, and these guys are, standing from a range, so they're usually pretty safe and they usually stay alive. And again, play in with the shadow damage for Shadow Blight. Yes, it procs Shadow Blight. Helps with that too. And then Army of the Dead, we talked about Army of the Dead before, generates corpses. It also generates attack speed with this codex, which allows your Reapers to proc more corpses, allows your Shadow Mages to do more damage, and then your Iron Golem just kind of swings his fist. It doesn't matter. But the 135% reduced damage is why I like to have it on my amulet, because for a brief window, my minions are not dying ever, which is really sick to say. And then this necklace, one thing to note is it has 3 ranks of Hellbent Commander. You can do whatever you want, but I like Hellbent Commander. But yeah, as you can see, I focus on CR a lot. I try to get resist. I try to get Blood Orb healing because that will amplify the healing received, right? For my minions. And I will put dot damage on my weapon. I try to find things with fortified. But one thing I've been focusing on recently is my damage to injured enemies. Now, a lot of classes in this game, like Blown Spear, druids that are using the bear form, and some other classes, like Icicle Mage. They do a lot of upfront damage, and they like to go for things like healthy damage, percentage to healthy enemies. And knowing how Shadow Blight works, I've been trying to focus on damage to injured enemies because my dots do nothing in the beginning, but my dots will amplify damage the longer they're on someone. So I like to consider that as, okay, if my dots are ramping, I want to make sure I amplify the point of their ramp. So that's why I'm going for damage to injured enemies to further amplify my maximum damage potential when it's going to be ramping anyways, right? So going damage to healthy is not good in this build. But yeah, crit chance helps your minions. On a crit video, he said that, as well as crit damage. So that's why I rolled a sword. But I didn't really like scythes, and I wanted to go 2-hand sword, because that's pretty badass. The Necros can use 2-hand sword. And overall, though, we have a lot of things that proc Decrepify, but the most consistent way, because we don't use a basic attack skill and we don't use a core skill, is to use your dot from this blood mist, and then the free detonate deads to generate CDR, from the Decrepify, and your minions attacking it too, contributes to that. And my favorite defensive is probably gonna be this armor one. You could go the elite one, where when you attack elite, you get a barrier. That's a really consistent one. Or you can go immunity bubble, which I'm going to probably be swapping eventually because it gives me a bubble that I can just stand still and cast that exploding corpses on. So yeah, that is the items, and hopefully that makes sense. And I'm going to talk about the rotation. So my rotation usually, again, this is a really reset centric build. So if you like playing classes that are like playing piano and you're just like pressing buttons as they pop up, this is going to be a really good build for you. You're going to have a lot of CDs resetting all the time, and you're going to have consistent stuns and vulnerable from your golem. You're going to have slow on everything because that's your only essence cost, and your natural essence gain is pretty sick for that. And then you're going to also have Explosive Mist, which is an immunity, and you can just spam it, and it's going to, again, leave a trail of dot damage to proc your Shadow Blight, as well as leaving some corpse explosions. And there's a really cool interaction with this Blood Mist, Explosive Mist thing that I always take advantage of as well, and hopefully they don't nerf. So essentially, I'm gonna always start off with my curses, about 2 to 3 casts to make sure I encapsulate everything in the mob. And usually it's one that can take care of it, but I like to just spam it a little bit because I can. It's my only cost. And then I'm gonna immediately transition to blood mist and walking over the enemies and leaving a path of shadow dot damage, as well as making sure my corpse explosion is hitting them. And I don't have to even care about that because it's auto homing skeletons that are running towards my enemies. And then I'm gonna get 2 free corpse explosions, like from the, if I'm just starting combat and there's nothing around me, I'm gonna get 3 corpses from one use of my um, my explosive miss here, right? And then the generating corpse from the passive as well. I'm gonna get 2 free corpse explosions no matter what. Now that can be 3 when there's 5 bodies around, but again, you generate 3 corpses from your passive, and then you can detonate twice without any other corpses around, just from the natural gen. And then the third one will not detonate. And that one, you will use Raise Skeleton to get a Skeleton Priest out to buff your damage of your minions. Then you're going to proc Army of the Dead, which is going to keep your minions alive, or res any minions that might have died while you were setting this up. And that's going to burn through everything in the game. And then you're going to hit stun. You're going to hit stun around the same time to add vulnerable, or you can hit stun beforehand, but I like to just proc my Raised Skeleton so that none of them die. But then you're going to, proc this stun from your Golem, and then you're just going to stand still and explode dead on any corpses you see, and they're going to follow your enemies. So, yeah. And then you kind of rinse and repeat and press any buttons that reset. But I always try to keep my Blood Mist going because that's a really good amount of ticks that come from that. So I'm going to show you guys the specific method right now, and I'm going to run through a dungeon. And this video is going to be pretty long, but YOLO, I'm actually going on vacation tomorrow. So I wanted to make this video before someone else figures this out. Maybe they won't. I'm pretty confident they won't. But to also help you guys out as the weekend is coming, and maybe you gave up on Necro and working on a different alt now, or maybe you were also going Summoner and you already have a lot of the things in place to make this build work. Might as well just try something new and don't give up on your dream and your fantasy of what you wanted your Necromancer to be like. So I never gave up, and I'm glad I figured it out because it was pretty miserable to get tier 4. So I'm just going to run a 30 just to show you guys that I can. And I know that's not the 31, and I have done over 30, but I think that's a good gauge if something is endgame. And then I want to keep this video somewhat short, is to run through 30s, because 30s is a great way of progressing yourself 80 plus, right? So it's a. So I'm going to go ahead and find a key, and then, this one has shadow damage, so I'm just going to roll this. I'm going to TP. But yeah, I'm going to talk about the cons of this build. So this build requires uniques, especially the gloves, and I'm looking for the rings that make your minions do explosive damage. So that's where I'm aiming towards. And also, there's a really cool one-hand scythe that explodes, that I was playing with near the end of tier 3, that explodes 3 to 4 corpses on one detonate dead, or corpse explosion. And then in my blood mist, I was detonating like what 12 corpses in one cast. So that's my end game right there. I'm want to get rid of my manual casting as much as possible, so I can potentially go 2 curses, and then there's a codex that does, when there's 2 corpses, you do 80% more shadow damage. And I bet you the server is down right now, so I might have to do part 2. But this is a really fun build. It requires adapting and knowing what's wrong with your character at the moment, and then trying to amplify that. And then one con about Necro is move speed for sure. Only class in the game without a move speed ability, which is kind of ass. So you must go move speed on your on the necklace and find move speed on your boots. And then I personally like the evade that gives me 75% more move speed as well. And then that move speed, by the way, after you evade, applies to your blood mist. And then one con of this specific build that I go is that when there's no corpses, this build sucks. Right? And then your minions die, obviously. If you're pushing harder content, your minions have a higher likelihood of dying for sure. So again, when I spacebar, it's gonna let me move really quick in my blood mist, and I like that burst of movement speed for this. Um, and then I think one cool thing about Iron Golem is I can shift left click, and it's the only way of positioning a minion in this game, unfortunately. So that's pretty cool. But I wanted to show you guys what I meant by the rotation. I'm gonna pull it back up. Again, one cast of Blood Mist generates 3 corpses, and 2 of those corpses will always explode, leaving a third one for you to use to either explode or use Raid Skeleton. And I always recommend using Raid Skeleton. So I'll show you what that looks like right now. It's gonna be 1, 2, and then the third one is a Raid Skeleton.